Greetings, everyone. Pete Pardo here from Sea of Tranquility. Welcome to a special little, birthday show for me today, right? So it's Friday, January the 5th, 2024. Today is my 58th birthday. And I figured, since Martin and I weren't doing a show this morning, I figure maybe I can do a little something that takes a look at my birth year, right? So I figured, all right, that's 1966. Obviously, in 1966, I wasn't really listening to music because I was a little tyke, but within a few short years I was, and I don't often talk about, and we don't often talk about the 60s much on the channel when it comes to talking about albums and favorite albums and bands and things like that. At least not as early as 66. We sometimes do 68 or 69 for sure, but we tend to neglect, I think, 66, 67 for the most part, even though that is the start of the formative years for albums, right? Where we're moving away from mostly singles into rock bands and pop bands doing more for the album format as opposed to just releasing songs for radio airplay. So I figured let me take a look and go back and pinpoint and discuss my 20 favorite albums or most noteworthy albums to me from 1966, the year that I was born, 58 years ago. God, hard to believe I'm 50. If you would have asked me 20 or 30 years ago, it's like, what's it going to be when you turn 58, Pete? I would have been like, I have no clue. God, will I still be around when I'm 58? That seems like such a long way off. Well, here we are. So I figured what I'd do is I went through all of the albums that were released in 1966, and as best I could, I highlighted 20 that I think for me are the most notable based on what I like. So there's going to be other albums that I'm not going to mention today because it's not really my thing, right? Like I noticed there's a great Bob Dylan double album released this year. I'm not a Bob Dylan fan. Some of you probably love that album. It's a legendary album. It's not really my cup of tea. So I'm not going to name stuff like that. But if it's important to me, at least a little bit, even if I, like some of the songs, maybe don't own the album, but have like hits compilations, songs came from that album, I'm going to include it here. So I think for me, these are the noteworthy favorites from 1966. And I'm going to start from January and go all the way to December. So the first album, and I have hard copies for some of these, not all of these. The first album I'm going to mention here was released January 3rd, 1966, 2 days before I actually came into the world. That's Paul Revere and the Raiders, Just Like Us. Pretty big album for them. It's their fourth album, and it contained the hit Just Like Me, right? I like a bunch of Paul Revere and the Raiders songs. I have a hits compilation, so it's pretty cool. So that's my first selection. Two, this is another band that I probably should go. I have a really good hits compilation that I like quite a bit. I've had it for many, many years, decades even, and I probably should go out and buy their individual albums at some point because, my father was a really big fan, and I do really like their music. And that's Simon and Garfunkel, Sounds of Silence, which came out January 17th. They actually had two albums that came out in 1966. This was the first. I mean, this has the title track, which I love. Homeward Bound is on here. I Am a Rock. All three were really, really big hits. Just I really, really like Simon and Garfunkel a lot. This was their second album, so that's my second pick. Going on to number three. How about came out at the beginning of February? How about John Coltrane's Ascension? Pretty cool record. I'm going to have a little bit of jazz on here. Probably could have put a lot more. There were a lot more jazz albums released in 64, 65, 66 than there was like rock and pop. So I could have had a ton of jazz on here. I have a few, but there's a lot more I could have had. This one, How Do You Follow a Love Supreme, which is considered by many to be his masterpiece? Well, with Ascension, which is a little bit different. Kind of is another kind of move away and into the spiritual stuff that he started with A Love Supreme. He would go into lots of interesting free jazz shortly thereafter, but I think Ascension is a pretty cool record. Next up, released April 15th, Aftermath by the Rolling Stones. So you had the US and the UK edition. Both were a little bit different. Here in the US we had Paint It Black, Under My Thumb, Stupid Girl, Lady Jane, all great songs. Really fun album. I really like this. Is probably my favorite of the really early Rolling Stones albums, pre-Mick Taylor era. Then on the UK side, you had Mother's Little Helper on your album, right? But yeah, Aftermath, really, really good stuff. Next up, released May 6th, the debut self-titled album from The Small Faces, right? Mr. Marriott and Company. What You Gonna Do About It? Sha-La-La-Lee, right? Cool songs. Small Faces, short career. Very, very cool albums. Next up, we're going to go with another Paul Revere and the Raiders album, Midnight Ride, released May 6th, 1966. Not Your Stepping Stone is on this one. Very cool song, as well as Kicks. Next up, Frank Sinatra. Strangers in the Night. Yeah. Released May 30th. I mean, how cool is that? How cool is Strangers in the Night? Sinatra had a couple really good ones this year. Summer Wind is on here too. Downtown. I mean, regarded as one of his great albums. Growing up in an Italian household in the 60s and 70s, couldn't escape all the classics from Sinatra. Strangers in the Night is one of his most noteworthy songs. Heard it so many times in my life. Always love it. Coming up next, released early June, Wayne Shorter, Speak No Evil. Yeah. Great album with Wayne as leader, one of the great sax players of all time. He's got Freddie Hubbard on here on trumpet, Herbie Hancock on piano, Ron Carter on bass, Elvin Jones on drums. Most of those guys played with Miles Davis, right? This was around the time where, Wayne was doing lots of stuff with Miles Davis and that amazing band from the early mid-60s before Miles went into more fusion realms. This is just a terrific, terrific album. One of my favorites from the 60s. Next up, we're going to go to the Yardbirds, July 15th. Whether you call it Roger the Engineer or Over, Under, Sideways, Down, or just the Yardbirds, I have a collection which has got a ton of Yardbird stuff on it. A good chunk of their repertoire is on here. This features Jeff Beck at the height of their psychedelic era. Really, really good album. A lot of really cool tunes on there. Next up, July 18th, just a couple days later, The Fifth Dimension by the Byrds comes out. All right, third album. This has the classic 8 Miles High. Who would have thought that psychedelia and folk music would combine for such a cool sound? The Byrds, so influential. All right, let's move up to July 22nd. July was pretty hot and heavy here. John Mayall and the Blues Breakers. Blues Breakers with Eric Clapton. What a sizzling electric blues album this is. Some great blues standards. You do some great covers on here. There's great originals on here. Here you have the debut of Eric Clapton outside of the Yardbirds. I think really this was here where all of a sudden that Clapton is God thing started to come. Great guitar solos on here. And then, of course, he would leave the Blues Breakers to join Cream. Not that long afterwards. More on that later. Next up, August 4th, or fourth album from this band, released in early August, The Animals, Animalization. Had their big hit, Don't Break Me Down. I like a lot of the hits and some of the deep cuts from The Animals. Pretty cool band. Then, perhaps the biggest one of the year for me, Revolver by the Beatles. Yeah, August 5th, 7th album. I mean, when you got Taxman and Eleanor Rigby and Yellow Submarine and She Said, and Got to Get You Into My Life and Tomorrow Never Knows and everything else, one of their best, 5 times platinum here in the States alone, millions and millions of copies rest of the world over. Top 3 Beatles album, in my opinion. So good. All right, August 15th, the debut from the Jefferson Airplane, Takes Off. Grace Slick not in the band yet, but still sounds like the Jefferson Airplane. Very cool debut album, very cool San Francisco area psychedelic band. Solid record, solid debut. I, of course, like the ones to come better, but it's still really, really good. Also in August, East West from the Paul Butterfield Blues Band. This is red hot stuff. Bluesy, funky, soulful, rockin', great, great, great stuff. They have a couple really, really good albums in my opinion, but this is definitely their most noteworthy. All these blues, work song, walking blues, title track, 2 Trains Running, great stuff there. Here's a cool one. I always, again, I grew up watching the Monkees TV show. How about the Monkees self-titled debut from October 10th? #1 selling album, 5 times platinum here in the States. Got Last Train to Clarksville, right? Monkees TV sensations. Hey, they're releasing albums too, right? Why not? Great, great pop band. Very cool for what it was. It was kind of a novelty thing, but it was still fun. Everybody was looking to be the next Beatles, right? And the Monkees were kind of, for a brief time, they were kind of like thought of as possibly the next Beatles here in the States, along with like the Beach Boys, right? I could have included Pet Sounds. I'm not really much of a Beach Boys fan, and quite honestly, I've only ever maybe listened to Pet Sounds once, so I didn't include it here. I know a lot of people are going to assume that should be on this list, but it's just not really much my thing. Here's one that I know will please a lot of my friends over in the UK. The Kinks, Face to Face. October 28th, fourth album. It's got Sunny Afternoon on it. A lot of other cool pop songs on here. Party lines on here. Fancy, Little Miss Queen of Darkness. Quirky, charming, early Kinks. All right, back to the States for December 5th. The Buffalo Springfield self-titled debut. It's got For What It's Worth, right? Very cool, kind of psychedelic pop. Stephen Stills, Neil Young, Richie Furay, yeah. Who, of course, will all go on to other things, right? The band didn't stay together too long. But those first two albums, really good stuff. Another one of my favorites from the year. We're going to go with December 9th. Fresh Cream. Yeah. Debut of the big supergroup. So, again, we're only a few months after Clapton's debut with the Blues Breakers, and already, boom, he's out of that into here. So really two fantastic albums on the charts during the year for Mr. Clapton. Here he teams up with Ginger Baker and Jack Bruce, of course. It's got I'm So Glad, Spoonful, Sweet Wine, Rollin' and Tumblin', Toad, I Feel Free, NSU. I mean, those Cream albums, legendary. And last but not least, to number 20, December 9th, also the same day as the Cream album, a quick one, While She's Away, from The Who. It's their second album, includes their first rock opera suite in the title track, which is very, very cool. Of course, Pete just starting to think in terms of long-form compositions and albums, because The Who were pretty much a kind of like a singles band before this. Pretty strong album overall. It's got Boris the Spider on here. You got some fun stuff like Run, Run, Run and Heat Wave and, Batman and all this funky, crazy stuff. Don't Look Away, Whiskey Man, right? The Who would go get a little bit more serious going forward, but I think the title track on here was basically them moving up to doing, like I said, more serious works. So, yeah. And if you get the reissues, you get all sorts of bonus tracks and stuff on there, which is always really cool. So, yeah, there you have it. 1966, there's plenty of others. I went and looked at all the albums listed, and I could have done 58 for 58 years of me, but we'd be here all day just listing stuff, right? But a lot of other jazz stuff and lots of other kind of cool pop things and whatnot. But some stuff I'm not as familiar with, But I think the ones I mentioned were probably, for me from '66, it's kind of a slightly slim pickings of a year. '67, '68, '69. Then we're talking more serious, but kind of cool to look back on the year of my birth and what are some of the things that I have listened to and do listen to from that year. So if you care to play along, right, pick out your 20 favorites from 1966. Help me celebrate my 58th birthday here today, and put them down in the comments below. And visit us on the web at www.seatranquility.org. We're on Facebook, we're on YouTube, all together all the damn time. Please subscribe if you haven't already, and click on that notification bell so you get alert of all of our content as it posts. And please do hit the like button before you leave. Also down below we got the links to our Ko-Fi page for channel donations, as well as our merch page and our Cameo page. So thanks in advance for all your support there. On my birthday, so Pete, what are you doing on your birthday? Well, I have off from work. I'm not doing much of anything. I'm going to sit around and watch some movies. Get ready to talk to Simon Bray over the weekend so we can rank the albums of Johnny Van Zant Band. Maybe go out to dinner, take it easy, maybe play a little guitar. We'll see how it goes. We got snow coming in here in the Hudson Valley on the East Coast this weekend. So it might be one of those weekends where I don't do much of anything, and that's okay. Need to relax a little bit after the holidays, so I'm fine with that, and maybe just kind of think upon my 58 years on this planet and all the great music I've listened to and I've had exposure to, and I feel blessed for all of that, to be honest with you, because it's been a cool ride all these years, and music has been my number one passion in life for a long time, and it's pretty cool to think about all the stuff that's touched me over the years a lot. So pretty cool. Never really kind of thought about it this way, but as you get older, you start thinking about things like this. So thanks for watching, everybody. I am Pete Pardo. Enjoy your weekend. Thanks for joining, and we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.